Hello and welcome everybody, I'm the Rambling Director and welcome back to yet another retrospective analysis / review of Friendship is Magic. Today we're going to be talking about two episodes. The first one is Applebuck season. So the first episode, Applebuck season, starts off with Applejack and we get to see a conversation between her and her brother who we haven't really got to hear much from, Big Macintosh. He becomes a bigger character as the show goes forward. He's not yet acquired his signature catchphrase, which is yup and nope, which for a long time was all he said. In this episode and season 1 in general, he does tend to be a little bit more talkative. He's hurt himself, so Applejack is required to do all the apple bucking, a process in which the apple family kicks the trees to knock down the apples to collect them for harvest time. It's kind of a neat little world-building idea, and it also establishes the Earth Ponies' forms of magic. We see Pegasi can fly, unicorns obviously can use telekinesis from their horns, but Earth Pony magic is a little more subtle. Earth Pony magic basically means that they have super strength and they are really good with plants. That second part would be expounded upon much more in Generation 5. They keep that part pretty subtle in Generation 4. So going into the episode, there's a stampede. The cattle are terrified by Rattlesnake and they charge into Ponyville. Luckily, Applejack and her dog, who we meet I think for the first time in this episode, Winona, they wrangle the cattle back up. The cattle all have Wisconsin accents for some reason, which is kind of funny. So she is given a grand award by the city for her services rendered, you know, being an epic friend to save them all from certain death. And Twilight is trying to give a speech kind of introducing Applejack. It's several note cards deep, which I think is very fitting in her character, and it establishes her character going forward even better. Applejack is sleep deprived and exhausted from bucking all these apples, and when she comes in, she gives one of my favorite little Applejack moments ever when she sees the trophy and her sleep-addled brain can't process her own reflection. It's a really cute little moment. We also get one of my favorite Applejack lines. This episode for Applejack is very quotable. She has some really good lines in this one.
I like helping the pony folks and stuff.
And much like Tabitha St. Germain, who I praised in the last episode, a lot of this one is Ashleigh Ball's performance as Applejack. Later on, we would see her shine when because she's also the voice of Rainbow Dash, when she gets some good lines as Rainbow. But Applejack just is one of those characters like Rarity who gets a lot of memorable lines, and some of them are not really, I mean, like, "You're welcome" is a simple line, but then you hear her say it.
You're welcome!
And for some reason, it's really funny. Twilight goes to Applejack to warn her that she needs help, but Applejack is such a stubborn and prideful person, she won't accept any help. Earlier on in the episode, during that whole award ceremony thing, we established that Applejack was scheduled to help her friends with some various tasks during this week that this episode is based in. And what happens, of course, is that set up for later in the episode when Applejack is just too exhausted to actually be able to perform these tasks adequately. So her selfishness and pride in not asking for help with the apples is directly affecting her ability to be a good friend. Applejack makes everybody sick by mishearing the directions for muffins. She causes another stampede, which is a nice little circular little callback. She causes a stampede, this time of bunnies, because she's too sleepy to process that bunnies are not the same thing as cows. The flower ponies are introduced in this episode, and they are one of my favorites. I love the joke they pull off with this episode, and it really shows how good of a straight man Twilight is. And Twilight later will be continuing to be a straight man to many other characters, even though she herself can go crazy sometimes. But she is a really good straight man character.
The horror! The horror! It was awful! A disaster! A horrible, horrible disaster! I don't get it.
In the end, Applejack realizes she does need help because after all of her efforts, when she thinks she's done, she realizes she's less than halfway done, and she begs for help, at which point Twilight and the girls come in. Twilight proves that magic basically makes the economy in this world make no sense, and she thanks them all for being her friend. Cute little episode. I like it. As an introduction to Applejack's stubbornness, it's not bad. However, I think maybe there could have been better episodes. We see later that there are better episodes with this sort of theme as far as Applejack's character goes, but I like this one. I think it's a good way of introducing the fact that Applejack also has some strong, overpowering characteristics that are already there, and also some growth that we will see throughout the rest of the series. She will have to learn to become more humble and more reliant on others. That's a really good lesson. Problem is, it really is a lesson that you would expect more to see for the element of loyalty. Rainbow Dash. And a common complaint in the first 4 seasons is that Rainbow and Applejack really should have reversed elements. That Rainbow should have been the element of honesty, and Applejack should have been the element of loyalty, because they are, respectively, more honest and more loyal. I'd have to disagree, though, for reasons I mentioned in the first episode retrospective. I think it's really cool that the characters, they're known for these things. They represent the elements of these parts of friendship, and yet those are elements they struggle with. Applejack, we will learn later, when she was a kid, was a compulsive liar. So honesty is something she struggles with, which makes it more rewarding when she's honest. Rainbow is kind of a selfish person, and loyalty to her friends, when it costs her something, is hard for her. And so when she is loyal and gives up something in order to be loyal, it means a lot more. So yeah, if we were going at, that these elements represent the entirety of the personality of these ponies, I would agree they should have swapped, but I don't think so. I think it's really cool, actually, that these are things they struggle with, including Twilight representing magic, and she abuses magic. But we'll see more of that in later episodes. For now, the second episode of today's review. Honestly, it's a really good Pinkie Pie episode. Technically, it's also a Rainbow Dash episode, but really Pinkie kind of is the star after the first third. I'll explain what I mean in a second. So the episode opens with Pinkie pursuing Rainbow Dash, and Rainbow being really annoyed and making it clear that she does not really value Pinkie's friendship, doesn't really want to be her friend, thinks Pinkie's kind of annoying. I really like that we open, that's our opening handshake to this episode, to say that just because all of these people are friends with Twilight, and some of them are friends with each other, it doesn't necessarily mean that from episode 1, they were all friends in the same way. Pinkie and Rainbow seem to have been more acquaintances at this point, and that's kind of an interesting way to go. Obviously, she knows Pinkie because she lives in Ponyville, but to say that they're really close friends who actually have some common interests or even just a mutual respect for each other really would be going a bit too far at the beginning of this episode. So this episode really kind of develops them to a point where by the end, they are truly friends. Now, maybe you don't interpret it that way, but that's kind of how I felt the first time I watched it. It just seemed like they weren't really friends when they started off. Pinkie ends up persuading Rainbow to hang out by basically doing pranks. Rainbow realizes, hey, that's something we have in common, Pinkie. I love to do pranks. Let's go prank everybody in Ponyville. And they do some good ones. They make Rarity inhale like sneezing powder. They give Twilight disappearing ink as she's doing a science experiment. And, of course, they paint the apples of the apple orchard, which must have taken hours, if not days, to do, with paint that washes off in the rain. So it scares Applejack, makes her angry, and then she sees the paint washes off and she has a good laugh about it. Pranks are something I could believe both of these people would like to do, and yet it doesn't try to make them seem too similar. They get different things out of why they like to do pranks. And I appreciate the fact that they are kind of complementary souls, Pinkie and Rainbow. It also shows that Pinkie actually in some ways is more level-headed than Rainbow, because she has a moral compass about who she will prank. She won't prank Fluttershy because Flutters is just so sensitive that the most harmless prank would hurt her feelings. And Rainbow was going to prank Flutters and admits Pinkie is right. That's a cool kind of little way of showing that these two actually need each other. Rainbow's old friend from flight camp, Gilda the Griffon, comes to visit, and her introduction is pretty good. With a wild rock stinger behind her and a really intimidating design, Gilda actually is kind of a character that you wouldn't necessarily want to be friends with from the get-go, and that's really good character design because you learn she's kind of a jerk. Gilda basically wants to monopolize Rainbow's time while visit and thinks Pinkie is really, really lame. There is a major criticism I have with this episode, and it's where Gilda is concerned. Her dialogue is not terrible, but there are times when she just says things like Captain Lame-o, and that's the only real time in the series that I can think of where, like, and I mean the whole series, like all 9 seasons, you can tell that it was like 40-year-old people writing a kid's show, because nobody would say Captain Lame-o. I mean, what is this, like 1992? She's actually really abusive to Pinkie, which makes some of the humor, the slapstick, more funny, but it also makes you root for Pinkie all the more. As somebody who kind of, again, found Pinkie a little bit annoying by this point, when I first watched the series, this episode really endeared me to her because it made her the underdog. In fact, they do that even more so by having Pinkie go to Twilight to complain about Gilda, and Twilight basically telling her that she thinks that she's overreacting. Pinkie goes out and she witnesses Gilda out in the wild without Rainbow Dash, and she is a thief and a bully who screams at Fluttershy. And that's the thing that sets Pinkie off, and she decides she has to deal with this. Extreme measures, Pinkie Pie style, which means a party. What else would it mean? It kind of leads to a moment that I think is like the first real funny Fluttershy moment, and it also establishes my personal favorite type of humor to see from Fluttershy, which was her dry wit, which just once in a while comes out.
Your Auntie Pinkie Pie's got it all taken care of. I'm a year older than you.
All through this party, there are pranks set up all around the party, and Gilda keeps setting them off. For instance, eating a pepper, like a snack that's laced with pepper, so she breathes fire, and then she tries to get a drink, and uh-oh, a dribble glass, so she can't extinguish her raging thirst. Pinkie also shakes claws, hoofs, whatever, with her, and has a joy buzzer in her palm, or her hoof palm, whatever you call them. This also sets up my personal favorite type of Pinkie Pie humor, which is when Pinkie is genuine. She's not trying within the universe of the show to be funny. She just kind of is. Like, her simple logic.
Hey, I'm watching you like a hawk.
Why? Can't you watch me like a griffin?
They play Pin the Tail on the Pony, which, come to think of it, is kind of a weird game. It'd be like if I played Pin the Butt on the Bin. I don't know. Gilda, because she thinks Pinkie is setting off all these pranks to make a fool of her, doesn't trust her, goes the wrong way once she's blindfolded, and absolutely embarrasses herself, makes a complete fool of herself. And then she loses her cool, screams at everybody, tells them they're all lame, and blames Pinkie. Then turns out, shock, horror, surprise, M. Night Shyamalan twist, Rainbow Dash was the one who was setting all the pranks. I have to be honest with you. In hindsight, I realized that kind of should have been the obvious twist of this. When I first watched it, I was actually just enjoying myself so much, I didn't think about it. Like, it actually did take me off guard. I was like, oh, well, I mean, yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. What a good direction to go with this. Gilda and Rainbow have a few brief words in which Gilda accuses her of being a quote-unquote flip-flop, cool one second and lame the next. And Rainbow says if all you care about is your friends being cool, then maybe you need to find some new ones. She then apologizes to Pinkie for the way that Gilda treated her, and we get a cute little moment where Pinkie kind of is like, oh, well, you know, if you want to hang out with party boopers, that's your affair. I'm not judging you. It's kind of a cute little resolution. They shake hoofs and they both joy buzz each other. That's cute. I like it. I like the resolution of this one for more so than I typically would with this sort of episode. Yeah, Twilight gives the moral at the end by writing a letter to Celestia. You expect that. What I love about it is that Princess Celestia at the end starts to reply to Twilight, and she accidentally uses invisible ink, just like the prank that Rainbow used earlier. And then she's like, oops, wrong ink. And that, my friends, sets up for something that was terribly underutilized until literally the last season. They do explore it more in the IDW comics, but they completely wasted this premise, in my opinion. That sets up Princess Celestia as a prankster. And we get some hints here and there, but my gosh, I would love to see Hasbro do like a sequel series. Bring back Nicole Oliver and Tabitha St. Germain as Luna, and just do like one season. Just give me that. Give me one season where we just see Celestia and Luna pranking people. So yeah, I love that ending. Fantastic. Overall, both of these episodes, 2 very good episodes of Season 1, and they establish early on that we're going to get some really good character work for these characters, way above what you would expect in a TV show that was originally meant to be marketed towards 7-year-olds. This kind of sets the tone that it's only going to get better from here, and it does. So thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you in the next one.